Good morning and welcome back to Pick Up the Pieces. I am Stacy and we are in the pickup kitchen today. I have decided this weekend that I wanted some like Mediterranean, like Greek and Lebanese inspired food. So that just sounded really good to me. We just wrapped up doing our Thanksgiving video and that was awesome. And so I kind of wanted to carry on some of the like lemon flavors that I had used with the turkey into this weekend's delicious meal. So we're doing sort of a Greek inspired menu and this is what we're going to do. So the first thing we're going to make is a lemon dill chicken soup, which is called Galaktoboureko. I'm not going to guarantee that my pronunciations are perfect with all of these things, but I'm going to try my best. But this Galaktoboureko soup is one of my daughter's favorite things. So we're going to do that. We're going to do some baked marinated Greek chicken, which will be thighs and legs that we're going to marinate overnight in like a lemony, vinegary, garlic, oregano kind of marinade. That's going to be delicious. We're going to do Greek potatoes. I'm going to do a Fattoush salad, which is like cucumbers and tomatoes and lettuce and homemade pita that's crumbled up in it with some really interesting flavorings and seasonings. I did also get a nice, beautiful hunk of Greek feta. Fattoush is normally not topped with Greek feta. However, we love feta, and so I think I'm going to add a little bit of that to the Fattoush when I make it. Like I said, I'm going to make homemade pita. I'm also going to make Pastitsio, which is like a Greek baked pasta dish. That's going to be amazing. And then the final thing, as if this wouldn't be enough food already, I'm doing a Galaktoboureko, which is a Greek custard pie with a phyllo crust. And so anyway, today is Saturday. I'm going to do some of the prep today and then some more of the cooking tomorrow. And the first thing we are going to do is make our chicken lemon rice soup. The Galaktoboureko is basically a chicken lemon rice soup. My daughter absolutely loves it. She does not like to have sandwiches in her lunch. She likes to have like a warm meal every day at school. So I send her to school with like a lunchbox with a thermos in it, and I usually put something nice and warm in there for her. And so this week she'll have this chicken lemon rice soup as part of her lunch, and we'll probably have a little bit of it today as well. So the first thing I needed to do to make this soup is to make some homemade chicken stock. Now, I've already got one batch of homemade chicken stock done, and I still have to make one more batch. And so I make my chicken stock in my Instant Pot, and I do have a short video here on YouTube that shows you exactly how I do it, but I'm also going to show you how I do it now. And so this is our first batch, and there's a whole chicken in here with carrots, celery, onion, and garlic, and bay leaf, black peppercorn, and just water. And then I cook this on the pressure setting, and then you get really beautiful chicken stock out of it. So our chicken is fully cooked in here, and I am going to get this first batch of the chicken stock or chicken broth out of the pot, and then I'm going to get the second batch going, and then I'll move forward with making the soup. So my pantry shelves in the basement were getting a little low on chicken stock, so I figured while I'm making chicken stock for this recipe, I might as well make a bunch of it. I can pressure can it in my Presto electric pressure canner, not to be confused with a pressure cooker, and then we will have beautiful chicken broth on the shelf for whenever we need it. So this came out really great. You can tell by the color of it, it's like this nice rich yellow color, that it came out beautifully. And so I'm just going to get sort of some of this out of here before I try to pick up this inner pot insert and then like pour it. It is piping hot, and all I did was cook it on the manual pressure setting for about 35 minutes. And this smells great, and this will make delicious soups, or you know, it'll go in with our turkey when we make it for Thanksgiving. We use chicken stock for so many things. So I think I'm going to get the chicken out onto a tray. Now the chicken meat itself for both of the chickens that I'm using to make my chicken stock today will be used to make chicken pot pie. So I'm going to show you how to do that in a future video. But for now, I'm just going to take the chicken out and set it to the side. And when it's cool, I'll pull all the meat off the bones, chop it up. I'll put it in a freezer bag with the carrots that I cooked in here. And then when I'm ready to make my pot pie, I'll take it out and use it for that. So it will not go to waste. So first we will get our chicken out of the pot, and it's going to fall apart. I can already tell it's falling apart. So I'm going to try to use this to kind of fish it out as best I can, but when you pressure cook a chicken, it just It's just falling apart, and that's okay. The meat will be very tender, and it'll be perfect for a pot pie. Ugh. And then what I'll do is strain the rest of this into my colander, and then I'll put it into my canning jars. I've got my Presto pressure canner already on with the jars in it, and it is, they're coming to temperature, and then I'll be able to can it. And like I said, I'm going to reserve these carrots for the chicken pot pie. Oh, and speak of the pressure canner, the pressure canner is ready. So I will be able to spoon this hot broth into the jars, and I will show you how to do that. And like I said, I'm just taking the chicken meat out. I'm saving these carrots because they'll be delicious in the pot pie. But this chicken just absolutely fell apart. So I'm going to move this out of the way here. And now I'm going to pour this carefully through my colander. Inevitably, when I cook, I do make a mess, which I do clean up later. But we're just getting the rest of this chicken out of here, and it really is just falling apart. So tender and delicious. So there we go. So we've got that out of there, and now I'm just going to strain this broth. Okay, so my jars are ready, but before I start filling that up, I'm gonna get my next batch of broth going. So I've already used this Instant Pot one time to make broth. I'm just gonna go right into the second batch, and all I do is add in some chopped up clean celery. So it's probably about 3 stalks of celery that are clean and chopped into smaller pieces. I did 3, maybe 4 carrots that I've peeled and cut in half and then made them thinner. I've got a whole head of garlic here that I just broke up a little bit. I've got 1 bay leaf and about half a tablespoon of peppercorns. And now I'm gonna put a whole chicken in the Instant Pot. So I'm gonna bring this over to my sink. I have a chicken in the sink that I have opened. I've rinsed it, and I'm going to put it in the pot, and I will absolutely sterilize my sink, clean it very well after a chicken had been in there. But I'm going to carry this over to the sink so that way I'm not carrying raw chicken over to the pot. So be right back. So my chicken is in the pot. I'm just going to add fresh cold water to the pot till I get to the maximum fill line. With all of my vegetables and the chicken in the pot, when I add the fresh cold water, it ended up being about 12 cups of water into my Instant Pot. So I'm not sure that it makes exactly 12 cups of broth, but we'll find out in a moment. And I'm gonna get this cooking. So I'm just gonna put that on the pressure cooking seal mode and manual for about 40 minutes. I thought originally I had cooked the previous one for 35 minutes, but apparently it was 40. So we're going 40 minutes, and now this will work for me and cook while we are doing other things. So now I'm going to show you how we can up this homemade chicken broth. We are ready to get our chicken stock canning in the pressure canner. So this is my first batch of the chicken stock that I made, and it looks absolutely delicious and flavorful, and the pressure canner already has jars in it that are hot and ready to go. So for now, I'm just going to get them all out of the pressure canner. But the water does need to be poured out of these, and then they will be filled with the hot broth. I'm just going to use my ladle here and fill up my jars, and I have a nice clean funnel. Now, if you make your own homemade chicken stock, you have to pressure can it. It will not be stable on your shelf if you don't pressure can. If you don't have a pressure canner or you don't have the shelf space, you could always freeze your chicken stock or chicken broth in freezer safe quart-sized containers and keep it that way. But it is it will take up quite a bit of freezer space. So if you're trying to make a big batch of chicken stock like I am, it is good to invest in the pressure canner. And this is much easier to use than a traditional pressure canner with a weight. I just find that I feel safer using this because it's very automated, and then I don't have to worry about it. So again, you cannot water bath can chicken stock. It's not acidic enough in order for it to be safe for human consumption. You will have to pressure can it. So I'll fill that basically to right before the threads of the jar start. And now that this bowl is less full, I feel comfortable pouring. So out of my first batch of chicken stock in the pressure cooker, I got almost 4 quarts of chicken stock. And so I'm going to get these in the canner. So I have clean jar lids. I use the 4 Jars lids. I'm not sponsored by them, but I feel like they're great lids and I really like using them. I've really never had any jars fail on me when using these. And I'm just going to tighten them fingertip tight. Okay, so I have my 4 jars of chicken stock in my pressure canner, and I'm going to get this going. This will take I think it's 25 minutes to process, and I have my other batch of chicken broth going, and I will use some of that second batch of the chicken broth to make my soup, and then whatever is left I'll can up after this batch is done. This is going to heat up. Now, when it gets to the appropriate setting to pressure can, it's going to say vent on here and it's going to do a countdown. Once that countdown ends, then that is when I put the regulator on, and the regulator is what helps to set like the pressure, or what helps the actual pressure canner to set the pressure to make sure that your food then is safe when it's on your shelf. So that will be the next step. So I'm going to let this pressure canner just do the work for me, and my chicken stock is going to can. In the meantime, I'm going to pull the meat off of my first chicken and chop up that meat and carrots and put it in a freezer bag, and that's going to go in my freezer for the next time I want to make pot pie. So our first chicken is ready to go in a freezer bag for later use. So these carrots are going to be delicious in the pot pie. I'm not going to waste them. The celery and the onion and the garlic that's in there, I'm just going to discard. It did its job. But I will have 2 bags of chicken meat ready to go, and then the next time I decide I want to make pot pie, I'll pull that out of the freezer and then show you how I do it. And now that this is cool enough for me to actually touch without burning my hands, I can just basically peel this meat off and put it in the bag. And it's so easy when you've pressure cooked meat to then pull it apart because it's just so tender. And so as you can see, it's just falling apart. And I could chop this all up now in small pieces, but honestly, like when I make the pot pie and I take this out of the freezer, I can do it then. So it doesn't really matter if I do it now or I do it then. But I am making sure to take out any bits of fat or other not delicious parts of the chicken. And I'm just putting the best parts in this bag. And then when I go and make this pot pie, it's going to be amazing. So I am just going to pick apart this chicken. And my hands are clean. I have washed them thoroughly. So no need to worry about that. And I am kind of tossing what I'm going to be throwing out in this colander. If there's any additional juices that are going to come out of any of this, then I'll catch it in the bowl below, and then that'll go into our next batch of our chicken stock. Now this meat, I am going to chop a little bit. It is our white meat, and I don't want to just put a huge hunk of white meat in the bag, but the smaller pieces I'm going to leave as is. Now you could also take this cooked chicken and chop it up and make like a chicken salad. You could just shred it up and put it in your soup. We are going to take a bunch of this chicken and put it into our soup when I make the chicken lemon rice soup here as soon as this next batch of broth is done. And that will be amazing. We're going to use probably most of the second chicken to do that. Chicken, I don't even need to cut it. It's just kind of falling apart. Now my recipe for chicken pot pie, one chicken like this with the carrots and everything makes 2 pot pies. So I will probably use a majority of the second chicken in the soup that I'm making. And so I'll probably just shred all of the chicken up. So it'll be like 1.5 chickens. And I'll put that in this bag. So the carrots from the next batch will go in this bag. And then we'll just have really, really nice full chicken pot pies when I make it the next time. So you absolutely have a lot of options when you make chicken stock. You can make it just from bones. You can make it from whole chickens. And you can make it from leftover cooked chicken as well. This is like a really meaty chicken. So we're getting like a tremendous amount of meat out of here. And we'll have to see what happens. If when I make my chicken pot pie, I have enough to make 3, well, then I guess I'll make 3 chicken pot pies. But chicken pot pies are something that make a really great drop-off gift if you have a friend who has been sick recently or maybe has had a baby, or you've got parents. My parents were both recently sick and in the hospital, and I had one staying with me, and so when that was all happening, it would have been really helpful if I had already had one of these in the freezer ready to go for dinner. So you can set yourself up for, amazing meals ahead of time. You can also have meals on hand to give to people who might need them. And we often will share our meals with my parents as well. They live very close by, and a lot of times we'll make food and then we'll drop some off to them. So if we end up with 3 pot pies, then maybe they'll get one. And I'm just making sure to get the little bones out of the chicken. The worst thing would be to leave a little tiny bone in here and have somebody end up getting that in their bite. That is a lot of pot pie filling. I have a feeling we're closer to 4 pot pies because we do saute up veggies and things and add to that. So, all right, this is all set. It looks like I've gotten all the chicken. I'm going to wash my hands, and then I will be right back to show you how I make some hummus. I'm going to get going on some hummus, homemade, while I wait for my cans of chicken broth to be done and while I wait for this next batch of chicken stock to be ready to use for soup. My homemade chicken stock is pressure canning right now, and so it's got about 21 minutes left in the canning setting, and then it will cool down. I've got about the same amount of time left, ironically, in my pressure cooker, so my second batch of chicken stock is on its way, and so while we're waiting for those things to be done, I'm going to make some homemade hummus. Now, I got this recipe for homemade hummus from the guy who worked in the cafeteria at a previous job. So now it sounds really weird, but at a previous job, we had a cafeteria where there were people who would like make lunches and breakfasts sometimes. And they had this like sandwich that had hummus and like a grilled portobello mushroom and cheese and all sorts of amazing things on it. And it was literally like one of the best vegetarian sandwiches I've ever had. And the hummus at this place was like to die for. And I asked the guy for the recipe. So he like wrote it on a scrap of paper for me. And this is the hummus recipe that I've been making ever since. So you're going to need 1 can of chickpeas. This is about a 15.5 ounce can of chickpeas, and I'm going to strain it. So I've got like this little like strainer cup that I'm just going to set in a regular measuring cup, And I'm going to strain out these chickpeas. Now I will give these chickpeas a rinse because I want to get like any of the extra liquid off of them. But the nice thing about having this like strainer is that I can reserve some of this like chickpea liquid that's in this cup, because sometimes when I make the hummus, if I find that it's just not the right texture, if you add a little bit of that chickpea liquid, it will help kind of make it really smooth and delicious. So I'm just going to take this portion of my strainer to the sink and rinse these, and then I will be right back. So you could make a bigger batch of this if you want, but usually 1 can's worth of chickpeas is plenty for us, and so I'm going to just go with 1 can's worth. Now into this food processor, I'm also going to put a clove of garlic. I'm going to help the garlic out a little bit. And I'm just going to cut this garlic into some smaller pieces so that it can blend more easily. Now the secret to this hummus is you want it to whip in this food processor. You don't want chunky hummus, and the longer you let this blend, the creamier and more light and fluffy, I guess is the term, that it will be, and it will be absolutely delicious if you do that. And I learned that from the guy at the cafeteria where I worked. So in addition to the clove of garlic, you're also going to stream in some olive oil. I have a half a cup of olive oil. We may not need all of it. You do need a 1/4 cup of tahini. Tahini is just sesame paste. You can buy this usually at a Middle Eastern market if you have one. You can also get this like at Wegmans if you have a Wegmans in your area, or maybe like a Whole Foods kind of store. Or many of your more common grocery stores will carry tahini, but it is just sesame paste that is ground up, and this is the jar that I got today. Once it is open, you want to refrigerate this because it is made up of ground up sesame seeds, and they can go rancid if you leave them at room temperature for too long. So we're going to get this going right now and let this start to whip. We're also going to put in the juice of a lemon, but I'm going to get this going first. So I did add the juice of a lemon, and it was just a small lemon. That should be enough. Now I can taste this when it's done, or when I think it's done, and see if that was enough lemon. If not, I can always add a little bit more. But better to add a little less and then add more later than to add too much. So I added in half of the olive oil, so the recipe called for half a cup, but I added in just a 1/4 cup so far. Like I said, I will check this later on after it's done whipping to make sure that it's the texture and consistency that I want. If it isn't, I can add more lemon juice, I can add more oil, or I can add a little bit of that reserved liquid from the can of beans, and that will help to make it fluffy as well. There is one secret ingredient that goes in this hummus, and it is cumin. So I feel like cumin is more common in like Mexican cooking, or like maybe, you know, chili, things like that. I don't think you'd automatically think to put cumin into your hummus, but I am telling you, just a little pinch of cumin in your hummus, and it is absolutely delicious. You really don't want to add a ton. That was really just a small pinch. I do think that this is going to need the additional oil. I'm going to add a couple splashes of the garbanzo bean liquid first, and then add a little bit more oil because it is very thick, and you really want this to be like whipped, almost like a mousse consistency. The lighter and fluffier this is, the tastier it is. Okay, so the texture of this is much better. So you can see like this hummus is it's just very aerated. There's a lot of air in it. I don't like a very thick, very dense hummus. I like it to be like this whipped, fluffy texture. And then when I serve this, I'll put this on a platter. I'll sprinkle a little bit of sumac on it, which is a Middle Eastern seasoning. I'll do a little drizzle of olive oil on it. You could even put like some fresh parsley on it. Now, if you wanted a flavored hummus, you could put in some green olives or some of the like darker like Kalamata olives in this. You could add sun-dried tomatoes. You could add maybe a little jalapeno. Like there are endless combinations and possibilities of things you could put in here. I've seen hummus with pine nuts on the top of it. You could do that. If you wanted to be sneaky, you could even blanch some broccoli and mix that in and make a green hummus and sneak some vegetables into your family if you'd like. But hummus is absolutely delicious, plain just like this, but you can also dress it up and add all sorts of things to it. You could even split this batch in half and leave half of it plain and then half of it be a flavored or, seasoned variety. You could even add some cayenne or some hot peppers to one and make a spicy hummus. So the possibilities really are endless. All right, I'm gonna give this a taste for seasoning and see what I think. That is very good. I think I'm gonna add just a little bit more salt. I do think a little bit more cumin would be okay, just maybe the slightest dash of it. And I do feel like I want a little bit more lemon juice. I grabbed another lemon from my fridge. I'm not gonna use all of it. I'm just gonna put just the smallest bit, maybe like another tablespoon's worth, and then I'm gonna whip this up and see where we're at. We do still have a little more olive oil left that could go in, but we'll see after we add this how it is. So I grabbed a fresh spoon. Okay, that is phenomenal. The flavor is great. I am gonna add the last little bit of the olive oil. This hummus is gonna sit in the fridge overnight, and when it gets colder, it's gonna be like firmer. And so I don't want this tomorrow now when I go to serve it to lose that fluffy, lovely whipped texture. So I feel like whipping in the rest of this olive oil and then bringing it out and letting it come to room temperature before we serve it tomorrow will take care of that for me. Okay, so I think that should be good. I'm just gonna use the end of the spoon. Perfect, okay. So that is nice and light and fluffy. The garlic added just a little bit of heat, which is very interesting because that garlic was pretty potent apparently, that clove I put in. So that's nice. And the cumin just adds like this little smokiness that's really delicious. So I'm gonna put this into a container, put it in the fridge, and we will have this ready for us tomorrow. Our chicken stock now, our second batch of it, is still bubbling away a little bit in the Instant Pot, but I was able to relieve the pressure in there and open it, and so I'm gonna let that cool a little bit. I'm gonna get the syrup started for our dessert, and while that is going, then I'm gonna make up the soup really quick, and then I'll finish up the dessert. And then that'll be pretty much all we have to do for the rest of today. Today's Saturday, and our big Greek, Middle Eastern, Lebanese food fest will be tomorrow, and we're really looking forward to it. I also have my first batch of my canning chicken stock going in the canner. It's cooling right now, so that will be able to come out soon. And any of this stock that I'm not able to use up in the soup, then I'll be able to use or can up so we can put it on our pantry shelf. So our syrup for our Greek custard pie consists of 3/4 cup of water and a cup of granulated sugar. We're gonna throw in a cinnamon stick. We also need the peel of a lemon, so I'm not gonna zest this. This is just gonna go in, add flavor, and then be pulled out. So I don't want this like ground up really fine. So I'm just gonna very carefully peel using my vegetable peeler. And I'm not gonna peel so that I get a lot of the bitter white pith of the lemon. I'm just gonna try to peel very gently and just get the yellow part. So all I'm doing is just peeling this really flavorful lemon skin and putting it right in this pot. And you see I have very, very little of the actual white part of the lemon here, I'm really just getting a majority of just the yellow part. The white part of the lemon will have some bitterness to it, but this yellow part really just has the essence of the lemon flavor without the bitterness. So there is the peel of 1 lemon, and then I need the juice of half of a lemon, and so that's gonna go in. And this lemon squeezer is great. It comes in handy, and I can definitely get more lemon juice out of a lemon with this than I can with just squeezing with my hands. So sugar, water, cinnamon, lemon, 1/4 cup of honey goes in when this syrup has been reduced. So we're not putting that in yet. We're just gonna put this on the stove, bring it to basically a boil, so medium high heat, bring it to a boil, then reduce the heat to low, cover, and simmer for 10 minutes. So I'm going to get that going. While that syrup is working for us, I'm now going to finish up our soup. So this chicken lemon rice soup, like I said, is one of my daughter's absolute favorite things, and I will be fishing that chicken out of here and dealing with that and bagging it or whatever very soon, but it is boiling hot, so we're gonna wait on that. Our syrup for our Greek custard pie is simmering away, and so I turn this down to low and I put a lid on it. Now I've got 4 cups of my chicken broth that I took out of my Instant Pot right here in this pot, and I'm bringing that to a boil. The Instant Pot, it's piping hot, so I don't have to worry that it's cooled off at all, but we want that to be simmering a little bit. And 1 cup of the chicken stock is in here, and I'm going to add a 1/3 cup of lemon juice to my 1 cup of chicken stock in the blender. You're also going to add 1/2 cup of your cooked rice, and then the other 1.5 cups of the rice is going to be used for in the soup when you serve it. Now, I do not add my cooked rice to the soup and then leave it in there. I keep it to the side, so that way when I heat up my serving of soup, I will make sure that that's nice and piping hot, heat up a little bit of rice, and then add it as I serve it. I find with soups that have either pasta or rice in them, if you just put it all together, when you put it into your fridge, the starch will absorb all the broth, and then when you go to eat like leftover servings of it, it's just not as good. So this part of the recipe, this pureed up lemon juice and egg and chicken stock and rice, is going to serve as a thickener for the rest of the soup, but so this won't really mess up any of the rest of the recipe, but additional rice for serving will be served separately. Now I also need 2 egg yolks to go in this blender, so I'm going to show you how I separate my eggs. Now I'm going to save the egg whites. I'll use them to make breakfast tomorrow, and then the yolks will go in here and eventually in here. So all I do is crack my eggs in half, and then I always throw my shells in my sink. I do have a garbage disposal over there, so when I toss my eggs, that's where I'm generally tossing them. And what I'm going to do here is just use my hands to carefully separate the white from the yolk, and then I just put my yolk in this other dish, and my egg white is already caught in this bowl. And so I'll just do that one more time. I like to use my hands for this. I don't like to use like a fancy egg separator or anything like that, because I find most of the time, number one, I've got to clean it, and then number 2, it doesn't do a very good job of separating. So that is all I'm going to do with that, is separate it like that, and then I'm just going to wash my hands and get the egg white off of them. So my hands are nice and clean, and now I'm going to take my 2 egg yolks and put them in this mixture, and then I'm going to get my blender going to blend this up. So all you're doing there is just blending everything until it's nice and creamy and smooth. Smells delicious. I'm going to check with a spoon to make sure I don't have any solid bits of rice still in there. And I do not. This is nice and creamy. And all we're doing is adding this back into the simmering stock. We'll add in some chopped up chicken and then some salt and pepper to taste, and a little bit of fresh dill if we like, or maybe just use that to garnish, and then this is ready to go. Our chicken stock has come to a boil, and then also, as you can see over here, we've got our syrup simmering to go with our Greek custard pie, and I do have this on the lowest heat possible. And now I'm just going to stir this here into our broth. And this is what makes this the chicken lemon rice soup. This mixture of the rice The chicken stock, the lemon juice, and the egg yolk makes the soup nice and creamy, but you're not adding a ton of extra dairy. And then all we're gonna do is shred up a little bit of chicken and add that. So our broth is simmering nicely. And like I said, this soup is just so comforting. And then I'm just putting in 2 cups of my chopped up or shredded up chicken here. And that's ready to go. It's already ripped up in bite-sized pieces. And then I do have 2 tablespoons of fresh dill that I took from our freezer. What we did when we bought a big bunch of dill for making pickles was when we were done using it, we just kind of chopped it up, put it on a sheet tray in the freezer, and then froze it. And then I just put it in bags in the freezer. So now fresh dill is just getting stirred in. And because I did not actually dry the dill, I froze it. It should taste nice and fresh. And then all we have to do is taste this and see if we want to add any salt and pepper. And then we'll serve this in a bowl with some rice. Okay, so I am going to add a couple of scrunches of pepper. When I make my chicken broth, I do not use any salt in making it. So then sometimes when I use it, of course, I want to season my finished dish. But that is the beauty of making your own chicken stock at home. You can control exactly what you're putting into it and how much seasoning goes into it. And especially if you're trying to watch like your blood pressure or your salt intake, you can do that very easily if you make the ingredients fresh at home. So we'll dish up a little bit of this soup and I'll show you what it looks like. And then we will go and finish making our dessert. So I'm going to show you this completed avgo lemno soup. I just put a little bit of rice in my bowl here. And then I'm going to spoon some of my broth and chicken and dill right into this bowl. And that looks amazing. I did add a little bit of salt and pepper, and I think that amount that I added is going to be perfect. Now this is hot. It's very hot. So I am going to take just a small bite and let you know how I did. I just don't want to burn my face off. So this soup is so comforting and delicious. That little bit of tang that you get from the lemon is great because it makes it sort of feel very light but also comforting at the same time. And the balance between sort of that lovely boiled chicken texture that's just so tender and delicious with that little bit of lemon and the little bit of fresh dill and that little bit of creaminess that you get from blending up that egg yolk with the rice and the broth and the lemon juice in the blender. It's just absolutely amazing and so comforting. I can understand why this is one of my daughter's favorite things. Now, I have seen this made with orzo. The recipe that I looked up that I will include in the description box for you calls for rice, and so I follow it to the letter because it comes out perfectly every time. But if you don't want to use rice, you could absolutely use orzo. So I'm going to enjoy a little bit more of this, and then I'll be back to show you our Greek custard pie. We are going to finish up our custard pie. So that syrup simmered on the stove. And now we've got this lovely sugar, water, lemon peel, and cinnamon syrup. It smells amazing. And then we're adding quarter cup of honey to this. And so that's just going to go in. And then our instructions just say to stir this in. And then we're going to put this to the side, and it needs to cool completely. This will go on the baked custard pie when it's like done baking, and this kind of goes on as like the last step. And then generally I put this in my fridge and it sits overnight, and then you sort of eat it the next day. So we're going to let this cool off to the side, and we're going to proceed with the rest of the custard pie recipe. So my next step is to bring milk and some sugar to a boil, or barely to a boil. So this is my pot on the stove, and I am going to add 4 cups. So 4 cups of milk, we use 2%. And it says half of the sugar. So the recipe calls for 3/4 of a cup of sugar divided. So we have our 4 cups of milk in a saucepan. We're going to add 6 tablespoons of sugar. So the recipe said to take the milk and half the sugar, but then it's 3/4 of a cup of sugar divided. And so I had to math, we had to math what that was. So 6 tablespoons of the sugar goes in with the milk, and we'll turn that on. And we're gonna keep a close eye on that because we don't want our milk to bubble over. Now, in the meantime, we're gonna beat whole eggs, egg yolks, the rest of the sugar, semolina flour, cornstarch until they're fluffy and pale yellow. So the other 6 tablespoons of sugar, and that's gonna go into my mixer, and I'm going to add my 2 egg yolks, and then I've got 3/4 of a cup of semolina flour. That's going to go in. That is, semolina is like a fine corn flour, I believe. And I had this on hand in the house from the last time that I made this recipe. We made it one other time. We weren't sure if we were going to like it or not. I knew that I would like it, but I wasn't sure if anybody else would. And I made this dessert along with a couple of other desserts, and this dessert got demolished. Like, everybody went to town on this dessert and absolutely loved it. And so we're gonna make it again. So it is, again, the rest of the sugar, the semolina. I need 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, so I'll add that in a second, 2 whole eggs, 2 yolks, and then some vanilla. So we know, if you've watched any of my other videos, that I measure vanilla with my heart and not a measuring spoon. It says 2 teaspoons, which, sure, that seems fine. And then I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. Now, you can use potato starch for this recipe. I happen to be out of potato starch, so that is why I'm using cornstarch. I tend to prefer potato starch over cornstarch, but it is fine. We have it on hand. The recipe calls for it, and we're going to use it. So 2 tablespoons of cornstarch right in there. And then this, like I said, is going to get whipped. We're just keeping an eye on that milk just in case. This is going to get beat. We're going to beat that together until fluffy and pale yellow. I am just going to scrape down the sides here. The semolina and the cornstarch are sort of stuck on a side of the mixer, so we're going to make sure to fix that situation. Our egg mixture is now whipped really nicely, and our milk mixture is warm, not quite to a boil, but warm. So now we're going to temper this egg and egg yolk mixture, and we're going to do that by pouring just a little bit of this milk into here and whipping it, and then we're going to end up pouring this back into the pan and cooking it until it thickens. So I will show you how we do that. So what we've accomplished by doing that first, before just taking this over to the pan and putting it in, is we've tempered this egg yolk mixture. So as you can see then, the egg yolks did not curdle, they did not lump up, they just kind of warmed up a little bit. So now when I add them to the pan over a low heat in the milk, this is now going to thicken and become a really delicious custard. I'm going to turn this milk back on the heat, and we are going to now just add this tempered yolk mixture into this milk. And I'm just going to use this beater to get it going, just because that's what I have in my hand and it's already dirty, so why not? But then I'm going to grab my spatula. I'm going to scrape all of this custard base into this pan. And we are going to cook this sort of over a low or medium low heat until it thickens and becomes a delicious custard. And then what we'll do is let it cool a little bit. And we're going to layer this in a pan with some beautiful phyllo and some butter. And then we will bake it. So now you don't want this to boil, but you do want this to heat up, and you just want to keep stirring. And you can certainly use a whisk to do this, but I like using this non-stick spatula to do this, because now I know I'm not going to scrape up my pan or damage my ceramic pan. So we are looking for this to thicken, and the semolina that's in here is going to do a nice job of doing that. And I don't want this to get lumpy on me, so if I see that I'm starting to get some lumps, I will grab the whisk and start to use that. But the secret here is to kind of scrape at the bottom of the pan, and if you see any of these little lumps forming, that's completely fine. But you don't want this custard to completely lump up on you, so you just want to keep it moving, keep stirring it, keep stirring the sides and kind of scraping them down and scraping the bottom of the pan so that nothing is getting stuck or possibly even burnt at the bottom of the pan. And you'll be able to feel as you're stirring it that it's thickening up. And you do not want this to be this liquidy when you go to pour it in your pan with the phyllo. You do want it to thicken. And I will show you what it looks like when it is thick enough. But we are just going to keep stirring. You don't want to stop. You don't want to walk away. You want to keep stirring this. Keep it moving in the pan, and it will thicken because of that semolina flour. As this mixture cools, it will thicken a little bit more, and also it will bake in the oven as well. I don't know if you guys can tell, but this is definitely thickening up. That is the semolina flour working its magic there with the eggs and egg yolk. And this happens pretty quickly. You can see it was pretty liquidy, and now it's really nicely turning into a custard. It's kind of like almost like a pudding consistency now. And I turned the heat all the way down to low because I don't want to run any risk of this burning, but I just want all that last little bit of the milk to kind of combine. And it's okay if you start to see the custard bubble a little bit. This is exactly what you want. This is the consistency that you want. And like I said, I'm just waiting for that last little bit of liquid here along the sides to decide to combine with the rest of the custard. And then we will turn the heat off and let this cool. So there we go. I'm now going to turn the heat off. I don't want this to burn. It's very smooth. It smells wonderful. That vanilla fragrance is great. And see, this is the perfect custard consistency that you want. When you run your finger through it, you do get the line that stays on your spatula. I just tasted that to get it off my finger because it was hot, and it is absolutely delicious. So we're going to now get this off the heat and let this cool while we start assembling the rest of the phyllo pie ingredients. Our custard is all set, and it is cooling now. And like I said, as it sits, it does thicken a bit, and it tastes so good. So now I have my 9 by 13 pan or 13 by 9 pan, and I've got 2 sticks of melted butter. So brace yourself for this. Now, I also pulled some chicken stock out of the pressure canner, and one of the cans is making noises. So if you can hear that, I apologize. I'm not doing that on purpose, but my 1 can of pressure canned stock is being boisterous. So anyway, this is 2 sticks of butter, and we're going to take this pastry brush here. We're just going to butter this pan very completely. We do not want our phyllo or anything to stick in here, and this is going to be delicious. So when you work with phyllo dough, you do want to work quickly because you don't want your phyllo dough to dry out as it sits on the counter. The recipe says to take 2 sheets and cover the bottom. So I've got 2 sheets here, and they're just going to go on the bottom of the pan. I'm going to press them in, and then basically you're going to encase the custard with the phyllo dough. So I will show you how to do that, but all I'm going to do is kind of dot the butter on and spread it. It doesn't have to be like the phyllo dough doesn't have to be completely saturated with butter, but you do want it to be buttery so that it sticks in the pan, and the layers will be really flaky, so you do want that. So now we're just going to take sheets and we're going to overlap them so they're hanging over the sides. And then at the end, all the edges will be folded in. So you'll see here, basically, I'm going to create like a beautiful, I don't know, pocket to put that custard in. And it says one at a time, you're just going to layer these. So I'm going to do like one this way and one this way. And then I'm going to butter them, and then I'll add some more. And these edges that are sort of overlapping, they'll get buttered at the end, so no need to worry. They will not be neglected in the butter category. And I don't know if I said it, I think I did, but my oven is preheating to 350, but we're gonna bake it for about an hour, okay? And so we're gonna use half of this dough and then we're going to put the custard on, and then we're gonna do the other half of the dough. So this phyllo dough, it comes in, it's a 1 pound package. And this is 1 pound, right, or half of the pound right here, and then the other half of the pound is over there. So we're going to do this whole package of the dough like this, and then fill it, and then do this again. And if your phyllo is not cooperating, that is fine. I'm not going to tear it to shreds. That is a double layer right there, but no worries. I'm just going to butter it really well, and I'll add another piece over here in a moment. And I'm not neglecting the sides. I am buttering them as well. And then this is that extra one over here because I had already done 2 over here. And when I put that custard in, it will help to sort of press down these phyllo sheets, and it will be phenomenal. The beautiful thing about this dessert is like you get the crispy phyllo bits that sort of soak up that syrup with the cinnamon and the lemon peel, but then you also get the creamy custard, which is lovely, and then it's just like the textures are really fabulous, and you can serve this when it's still a little bit warm, and that's delicious, but like I said, it's also really, really good cold out of the refrigerator, and I find the next day it tastes even better. I'm sure tonight if we were to take a nibble of this when it came out of the stove, it would be lovely, but tomorrow after it's had a chance to sit in the fridge and soak up all that syrup, it's just going to be absolutely divine. So just continuing to butter the phyllo. My oven works faster than I do. So we're almost at the end here. And I think that was, yep, that was 2 pieces, so I'll just move this one over. And like I said, in between each, just do your best to sort of dot it with some butter and spread that all around. And you really just want to enclose that custard like a little package, because you don't want the custard to bubble out when it bakes. And I will show you what that looks like, of course, when this is all layered and ready. I'm making sure here to get butter up the sides. I don't want to neglect the sides here. And I have a feeling my counter will get a very, very good wipe down once I'm done with this because there is butter everywhere. Okay, and then this is, it looks like I think the last two. Nope, there are 4 more there, not 2, so there's one, it's 1 layer. And like I said, you will use your entire pound of phyllo dough in this recipe. 1 pound or half a pound goes on the top, and then the custard, and then the other half. Okay, and these are our last 2 pieces of phyllo for this layer. And it is okay if they are not exactly cooperative. This is fine because they are going to get folded in when we add this custard. And I put so much butter on that last layer, I think I'm going to forego it here. And I'm just pressing down. I don't want there to be like any air bubbles. Okay, so now the custard goes on. So adding my custard. I want to get every last bit of that beautiful custard out of the pan. And now I'm just taking my spatula and I'm going to spread this in an even layer on top of that first layer of phyllo. That looks lovely. So now I'm just going to use my knife here to scrape off all of this custard. I don't want to miss any of it because it is delicious. There we go. And then we are going to take the rest of the phyllo. So we have 1 more package. It's the other half a pound of phyllo. And we're going to layer this the same way that we did the first layer, but we are going to save 3 sheets to put on the top. So the last 3 sheets are just going to be like on the top to enclose this. So same as we did before, we are going to add our phyllo. So I'm pressing this phyllo down now on top of that custard layer. And again, as you add the sheets, you add more butter. And then this one, I'm going to overlap a little further on this side. I'm seeing that the sides are looking a little short. So I'm gonna sort of beef up this edge so that when it folds over, it encloses that custard perfectly. So my camera battery decided to be uncooperative this afternoon. What I did with that last half a pound of phyllo dough is I extended over the edges just a little bit more and, just put my 1 or 2 or 3 pieces of phyllo on and, of course, buttered every layer. Then at the end there, I just put my 3 reserved pieces of phyllo on the top because the recipe says to save 3 whole pieces of phyllo, put them on the top, and then just fold your edges in and encase your custard in that phyllo, and then just add some butter to the top. So now that that is completed, this is gonna go in a 350-degree oven for 1 hour. And before it goes in the oven, we have to score it so that it is easier to cut later. So the recipe says to take a sharp knife and score into squares, but do not cut all the way through to the bottom. So we're just kind of cutting like the top here, and you just wanna kind of saw through that top layer of phyllo, just so that you know later on when you go to cut this, like what size pieces you're cutting, and it kind of gives you like a guide later when you go to cut it. I just grabbed a slightly sharper knife here, and you're just gonna carefully cut through this top layer of phyllo, and once you feel it getting down to the custard section, then just kind of stop cutting, but you just kind of want to pre-cut your pieces before you put them in the oven. And it's very easy to feel when you're cutting this when you've gotten through that top layer of phyllo, so it's very easy to stop yourself from going too deep. Because if you were to cut all the way through, then you'd be pulling custard up through the top, and you don't want to do that. And then we're just going to do the same thing this way. Again, just through that top layer of phyllo. And some of these look like they might be a little more generous than others, but oh well. You could be absolutely perfect and meticulous with cutting this if you want to, but I think we're good enough. Okay, so now that we've sort of scored the top, we're going to bake for 1 hour until golden brown, and then while this is still hot, we'll put the syrup on the top, and I'll show you what it looks like when it comes out of the oven. So we ended up with 2 bags of our pot pie filling, so we finished pulling the chicken off of that second chicken that I used to make the chicken stock. We've got a total of 6 quarts of chicken stock made now, and the last 2 are in the Presto electric pressure canner to preserve so they're shelf stable. And now I'm just making up the chicken marinade for our chicken tonight, and our dessert is baking, and that is it. That's all I'm gonna do for the rest of tonight. And so the Greek marinade that I'm using, it just calls for olive oil, lemon juice, red wine vinegar, minced garlic, dried oregano, salt and pepper. And then I've got a bag of 2 bags of chicken thighs. There's 5 chicken thighs in each bag. I've got a big bag of chicken legs. There's, I think, 12 in here. I have a tray in my fridge. What I'm going to do is pour the marinade on these bags of chicken and then mix it all around and tightly close them up. And then I'm going to put these bags on a tray in my fridge and let them sit overnight. Partway through, I'll kind of flip them around, move them around, make sure they're getting evenly marinated. And then this chicken is going to get baked tomorrow. I have already trimmed up the chicken, put it in bags. I have thoroughly washed my hands and cleaned off my counter. So now we're ready to make our marinade. So it is 1 cup of olive oil and some salt and pepper. So I'm just gonna kind of guess how much pepper I want to put in there. And then I'm gonna put sort of a generous couple pinches of salt. It does call for about 4 tablespoons of dried oregano. I'm just gonna kind of estimate 1, 2, And one of those might have been a little hefty, so a little less than the last one. Now we've got, like I said, a cup of olive oil. We've got a half a cup of red wine vinegar, but what I'm going to do first is squeeze in these lemons because we need a cup of lemon juice. So I figure since I have such a big measuring cup here, the easiest thing I can do is just squeeze my lemon juice right into here and then stop when it reaches like that 2-cup level because I've got 1 cup already of olive oil in there. So we're just going to get these lemons squeezed. Fresh lemon juice is great. I'm sure you could use like some jarred lemon juice for this if you wanted to. I just happened to buy a bag of fresh lemons, so I've got them on hand and I've been using them for some of these other recipes, so why not use fresh if you can. And this lemon squeezer or citrus squeezer, like I said, is great. It is metal, and I will link it in the description for you. Plastic ones are fine, but I feel like a plastic squeezer like this is not going to be as sturdy as a metal one, and that's why I love this metal one. You just want to wash it really well in between uses because the skins of lemons and limes do have oils in them, and if you don't wash this thoroughly, the inside of it will get kind of sticky and weird, so you want to make sure you wash it really well. And these are very juicy lemons. They're not massive, but man, they are full of juice. This is great. And I do have some more lemons in my fridge if this is not enough. You can also take your squeezed out lemon halves, put them down your food disposal if you have one, and just take one of the halves and put it down there and blend it all around, and it helps to clean and freshen your disposal if you have one. But looks like we'll see where we're at after we squeeze these 2 halves. Well, two lemons, 4 halves. So I guess my list of stuff I wanted to do this morning didn't look that impressive, but now that I've gotten through it, it sort of is. We got through to the end of the day, but tomorrow will be really easy because tomorrow we just basically cook stuff. Okay, and I am going to need a couple more lemons, so I will grab those. Or handsome husband will grab those. That is wonderful. Two more, maybe. Thank you so much. Oh, these ones are huge. I don't know if we're going to need 2 because these ones are bigger. All right, so let's see. And for bigger pieces of lemon, you can rotate them in your citrus squeezer if you need to, if they're really big. That is perfect. That got us right exactly. So 1 lemon got us to that 2-cup measurement. So there we go. We have enough lemon. Now I'm going to mix in this red wine vinegar, which, like I said, is half a cup. And then we're going to chop up this garlic and get this in here. And then we will put it on top of our chicken. This is my favorite little garlic tool. And I'm just going to cut these cloves down a little bit before I put them through. My garlic is frozen. I will peel a big bag of garlic, like I'll buy it in bulk, peel a bunch of it, and then freeze it. And then when I need it, I just pull out the peeled garlic from the freezer bag that I need, use what I need, and I'm good to go. You can certainly buy peeled garlic already peeled in a jar for you. I've seen it at like BJ's or other big box stores, but it is more expensive than just buying like the actual garlic that you need to peel yourself. So it's up to you. If you are willing to take the time to peel the garlic yourself, you'll save some money. If you absolutely don't want to do it yourself and you just want the convenience of buying the already peeled garlic, you can do that too, but then you're just going to spend a little bit more money. Our dessert is starting to smell good. And so whenever you're marinating meat, you definitely want your marinade to be really flavorful. You want there to be a good balance of acid and salt and pepper and garlic and fat. And that will provide for a very delicious and tender product when you cook it the next day. I suppose that after we marinate this, we could grill this if we wanted to, but we are going to bake it. It is cold in Western New York now. The weather has certainly turned the other direction, and the chicken legs and thighs do take quite a bit of time to cook, and I don't personally want to be standing out at the grill in the yard for that long to do that. So you can use chicken breast when you marinate. Like if you don't want to do the thighs and the legs like we're doing, you could absolutely use chicken breast, and those obviously will cook for much less time, and so you could certainly do that if you wish. Now I'm just going to grab a whisk and mix this up. Okay, and I've got almost 3 cups of marinade, so that means I'm going to do almost a cup in each bag. Just give it a mix to make sure it stayed blended. We got quite a bit of garlic here in the bottom of the cup, so I am going to help that garlic get into those bags. I think we did a good job. So now I'm just going to close these bags, get as much air out as I can. I'm gonna give these, oh, this smells amazing. This smells so good. All right, and so give these a mix. I'm gonna get the rest of the air out. And then these I'm gonna set on a baking sheet or metal pan that is in my fridge. I just don't want these to leak on the inside of my fridge. The chicken is not gonna come in contact, like the chicken and the marinade will not come in contact in any way with the metal pan. I'm just setting the bags on the pan so that if one of these bags was to decide to spring a leak, it is not going to get all over my fridge. So this is our bag of legs. And again, I will make sure to clean this counter really, really well, just in case there's any escaping chicken juices from any of these bags or the outside of the bags. I will make sure that this is very thoroughly cleaned. And like I said, when these are marinating, I'm gonna open up the fridge before bed tonight. I'm gonna give these like a flip and a massage. And then I will do the same again tomorrow morning. And then right before we go to cook these in the oven, I'll take them out, sort of let them come closer to room temperature, mix them around a little bit more. And then this chicken tomorrow will get baked in the oven and we will show you what it looks like. So I will be back momentarily to show you, well, we got about another 20 minutes for our dessert. And when that comes out of the oven, I will show you what it looks like when I put the syrup on. Our Greek custard pie is all set and the syrup is completely cooled, and the instructions say that when the pie is hot out of the oven that you want to pour the cooled syrup on it, and then you want to let the pie absorb the syrup. The recipe also said pour any extra butter on the top at the end. I did not do that because I just felt like there was probably enough butter in this thing, but you could certainly do that. So I am just going to pour this syrup on, and this dessert is piping hot. It is literally piping hot. But because we've scored it, that will allow, oh, I don't know if you can hear that sizzling, but that will allow the syrup to absorb. And I'm using all of it, every bit of this syrup, and it will sit. Now you can let this sit for a couple of hours and then serve it right away. Like I said, I'm putting this in the fridge and then we're gonna have this tomorrow. This is good in the fridge for up to a week. It's not gonna last that long, I'm telling you, because it is phenomenal. But all of that syrup is out now. And now this Greek custard pie is just going to sit here and cool. It is going to absorb all that syrup, and it is going to be absolutely delicious. When you go to serve it, all you have to do is use your knife to then cut all the way through. You just sort of scored that top level of phyllo dough just so that A, the syrup would absorb, and B, you'd have guidelines to use when you do cut this. But we are going to let it cool. We are going to let it absorb that syrup. And like I said, we will serve that tomorrow, and I will show you what a piece of it looks like when we serve it tomorrow as well. So that is all for our first night of cooking for our big Greek, Middle Eastern, Lebanese food festival that I have crafted. We have a lot more to do tomorrow, and I'm excited to share that with you. But for now, good night, and we'll see you in the morning. It is now Sunday, and today is the day where we're going to enjoy our Greek, Middle Eastern, Lebanese meal. Our chicken marinated in the fridge overnight. It looks amazing, and I've taken it out of the fridge so it can come to a little bit closer to room temperature before it goes into the oven. So today we are making our pastitsio, which is like kind of like a Greek lasagna, but it's not really lasagna, it's like a baked pasta dish. So we're gonna make that today. We're making homemade pita bread. We are making Greek potatoes, baking our Greek chicken, making our fattoush, which is an amazing salad. And then we also have some dill dip that I bought at the store, the hummus that I made yesterday, and I bought some store-made grape leaves to go with like our little dip spread. We can eat that with some pita. We can also eat that with like carrots or cucumbers, something like that. So that's gonna go with our meal later. And I do have a beautiful brick of Greek feta that we will serve probably on the side, but then people can put that on their salad or whatever if they wish. So we are going to start our pastitsio, which like I said is a baked Greek pasta, and it is delicious. I've had it before, I've made it before, and it's so good, and I can't wait to show you how to make it and for my family to be able to try it. So what I have going on behind me is that I've got a pound of penne boiling. It's almost done, and we are going to make our bechamel, which goes on top of the pasta. We're gonna make our meat sauce, and then I'm gonna show you how we assemble it. And we're gonna bake it in our stoneware lasagna pan. And so I've got my oven set to 350, and I'm gonna show you how we make our pastitsio. It's time to make our bechamel. I'm just gonna turn my ceramic pan onto a medium heat, and we are going to melt some butter in this pan. So this is a half a stick of butter, and this is going to get melted, and then we're going to be making a roux. So that means we're gonna melt a fat, which in this case is butter, and we're gonna whisk in some flour, and you are going to want to cook down that flour in with the butter in the pan so that you don't end up with a raw flour taste in your bechamel. Bechamel has butter, flour, milk, salt, pepper, and Parmesan cheese in it, and also 2 eggs. And so I'm going to show you how we do that. And then after that, we're going to make our meat sauce. And then after that, we're going to assemble our pasta, meat sauce, and bechamel, and then put it in the oven. So our pasta is boiling here. It's almost done. You can kind of see that, I think, but it is not ready yet. Probably a couple more minutes, maybe 3 more minutes on that. So I am just going to get this butter melted. And to this butter, I'm gonna add 5 tablespoons of flour. Now, I think I'm gonna invest in one of those like silicone coated whisks because I don't like using metal cooking utensils in my ceramic pan. However, I really can't whisk this with a spatula. It really needs to be with a whisk. So I'm just gonna be very careful so that I don't scratch my ceramic pan, but one of these days I'm gonna find a non-stick or a whisk that can withstand heat that isn't gonna scratch my pan. So anyway, I'm gonna add my 5 tablespoons of flour, and I'm gonna get this whisking with the butter. And you wanna combine all of your flour with all of the butter. You don't wanna end up with like a flour spot that could burn. And you want to cook this, and you'll know that your flour and your butter mixture have cooked or started to cook because they'll smell a little bit nutty. You don't want a raw flour taste in your dish. That would not be good. I'm just going to turn my heat down a tiny bit. And really this mixture of butter and flour is going to serve to thicken the milk. So when I pour the milk in, it is going to thicken the milk and turn it into a sauce. So my roux smells wonderful. It does smell like kind of toasty butter, if that makes sense. And so now I'm going to slowly add my milk. I have 3 cups of milk. We use 2%, and you just want to slowly add this. You don't want to add it all at once because you don't want it to lump up on you. And you basically want to whisk your butter and flour mixture into the milk to create a very smooth mixture, which will then start to thicken as it cooks and will form a beautiful sauce. And I will show you how to know when the sauce is done. Usually it'll coat the back of a spoon, and when you run your finger through it, you'll get a solid line, and that's how you know it's ready. Bechamel sauce is the basis of a lot of recipes. I use this when I make my homemade mac and cheese, and it is absolutely delicious. One of these days I'll show you that recipe. But a bechamel sauce, if you can master how to do a bechamel sauce, there's a lot of recipes that you can make. So I'm just going to continue to slowly add my milk and whisk it so that we don't have any lumps. And I'm just letting that kind of heat up a bit. The milk was kind of cold. It was in the fridge. So I'm just going to let that heat up a little bit before I add in the next splash of milk so that it thickens properly and I don't have to fight with it later to prevent it from burning on the bottom of the pan or manipulate it too much. Like if you just let each addition heat up a little bit, then it ends up perfectly smooth and comes to temperature, and then you're sort of done more quickly, if that makes sense. I'm also going to put our pasta here in the colander. It is done. I don't want to overcook this. So I've got my pasta in the colander, and that is draining. I did run a little bit of cold water on the top of it. I normally don't do that with pasta. However, I'm doing that because very soon I've got to mix that pasta with some other ingredients, and I don't want the pasta, number one, to sit there and overcook, and number two, I don't want it to be too hot when I add the other ingredients. And I will show you that in a moment. We're just continuing to add our 3 cups of milk here to our roux. Okay, at this point our roux is nicely mixed into the milk. There's really no risk of it getting lumpy. It is nicely mixed, so I'm going to now let this come to a simmer. While we wait for that to happen, I'm going to add some salt and pepper. Recipe says about half a teaspoon of salt and about a half a teaspoon of pepper. Now, if you didn't want the black flecks of pepper in this sauce, you could use white pepper instead. I don't love the flavor of white pepper, so I do tend to use black pepper. But again, if you don't really like the flecks of black pepper in your white sauce, you can go with white pepper. All right, so we are gonna let this continue to warm up, and when it comes to a bubble, we'll be back and I'll show you the next step. Our bechamel is doing well. Oh, that was not intentional. And so I've been whisking it carefully to make sure it doesn't stick to the bottom of the pan. You do want to kind of scrape the edges here to make sure you don't end up with like crusty stuff around the edges, and just give it a good whisk. Keep it moving. And you can see that it is starting to thicken from where it started. I think it's just going to need another minute or two of stirring, and then it should be thick enough. And I will show you how to know that it is thick enough in a moment, but we are going to let this cook just a little longer. When you make this, you'll be able to see very quickly it turns from like very milky to the right consistency of a sauce. And it's like that butter flour mixture just is magical, but it just needs a little bit of time. You don't want to rush this step. You need to be patient. And like I said, you don't want to like walk away from your pan because you don't want your bechamel to burn on the bottom of the pan. But you just got to be patient. You've got to be patient with your flour and your butter mixture. cooking so that the flour doesn't taste raw, and you've got to be patient when your milk is simmering with that roux and let it get as thick as it needs to be so that your sauce is not runny. So you'll be able to feel as you stir that it's thickening. You can see that as I sort of tilt the pan, you can see that it's thicker. And that's why I like working with sort of the shallower pan. If you're using like a taller pot like you'd use to make pasta, it's a little harder because you've got to get your arm in there. This is a much easier depth to work with when it comes to the pot or the pan that I'm using. So I'm going to see if this is thick enough. I'm just dipping my wooden spoon here, and when you draw a line and the line stays in place and it doesn't move, then you know your bechamel is good to go. So I'm going to turn this off. And now that it's off the heat, I'm going to stir in some Romano cheese. Now the recipe calls for Parmesan cheese, but I use Romano and it's a half a cup. So I am going to just sprinkle this over the top and mix it in. Personally, I like Romano cheese better than Parmesan, so that is why I use it. But you could certainly just follow the recipe and use Parmesan. And freshly grated Parmesan is definitely going to be the way to go for this. You don't want to use like the stuff in the green can. So I'm just letting that cheese sort of melt into the sauce. And as this cools, it will thicken a bit. So it will not be runny on top of the pasta and meat sauce. It will thicken as it cools. And then also we have to stir in 2 eggs. So we don't want these eggs to cook. So if I have already put them in a dish and I've already whisked them up a little bit, and I'm just going to slowly put them in here. I don't want to scramble these eggs. The heat is off, but our sauce is very warm. So you just want to make sure that you work quickly here. Putting the eggs in like whole without sort of pre-mixing them at this point is a dangerous task, because if you plop that egg in and it starts to cook, there's really no saving your sauce. So I am just drizzling in my beaten egg here. And as you can see, it's mixing nicely. That's also going to help the sauce to firm up a bit because the egg will thicken it. And it's going to add a lot of richness too. It's going to be delicious. All right. So that is our bechamel, and we are going to now set this to the side, and we're going to get our meat sauce started. Our bechamel is cooling, and so now I'm going to mix up this pasta, and I'm going to get it in my baking dish because this is the base of the pastitsio, and then the meat sauce goes on top, and then the bechamel goes on top of that. So this is 1 pound of cooked penne. I put 3 tablespoons of olive oil in with the penne and stirred it around. We've got a half a cup of chopped up parsley. We have 3/4 a cup of our Romano cheese, and then we have 2 beaten eggs. And I am just going to mix this thoroughly and get this in the bottom of my pan. That way when my meat sauce is ready, then it can just go right on top of this and we can get it in the oven. This smells amazing. I know it's just like pasta and olive oil and cheese and stuff, but it just smells delicious. I can't wait for this later. This is gonna be really good. So, all right, and because I had beaten up that egg a little bit before I put it in here, I don't have to fight to get that yolk and white mixed in. It's mixed in nicely, so I am just gonna get this in my stoneware baking dish, and this is the base layer of our Greek baked pasta. I will spread this out. Okay, and now we're gonna go back to the stove and I'll show you how to make our meat sauce. I am now heating 2 tablespoons of olive oil in my pan here. We're going to make our meat sauce. And so this meat sauce is going to come together pretty quickly, and then it is going to simmer for about 30 minutes. And so then we will move on to making our pita dough while this is simmering. And so the first step is just to heat up this olive oil. I'm adding a red onion chopped. Now the red onion that I had was massive. It was so huge. So I'm just doing half of it because it was just an enormous red onion, and I just don't think we needed that much red onion in this. So half of a red onion because it was massive, but the recipe just calls for 1 large red onion. And then we've got garlic. This is 5 cloves of minced garlic in my favorite little kitchen gadget. This garlic chopper saves me so much time. So there's that. And I'm just going to get this sauteing. So minced garlic, chopped red onion, and olive oil. It already smells delicious. I'm very excited about this pasta dish, if you can't tell. We like pasta around here, but you know, I think sometimes we get tired of the same thing, so it's nice to have kind of a variety of recipes to try and to enjoy. So this is going to be a great meal. So we're going to saute up that garlic and onion, and we're going to do that until it is soft and translucent. Our onion and garlic has gone a little translucent here. It's cooked, softened a bit, and it smells amazing. So now we are to add tomato paste, and the recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of tomato paste, but I don't know about you guys, like I don't like to use a little bit of tomato paste and then waste the rest of it. Like, it pains me to do so. So I'm going to use half the can. This is a 6-ounce can. I'm going to use 3 ounces right now, and then if it doesn't look tomatoey enough, I will add more. There are some diced tomatoes that go in this later. But like I said, I don't know. I don't love using a half a can of tomato paste and then like the other half of it, what do I do with it? Usually I put it in a container in the fridge, I forget about it, and then it goes moldy. So I may end up throwing all of the tomato paste in here. And you know, that's just kind of going to be my take on the situation. And like I said, I don't like wasting it. So yeah, I'm going to throw in the whole can of tomato paste. It is a small can. It's just a 6-ounce can. And like I said, the original recipe just calls for 2 tablespoons, but you know, I just, I don't want to waste it. So I'm just going to toss it all in, and it will be tomato pasty. But I still think with the rest of the ingredients and the water that we add as we simmer this in a bit, it will be very flavorful, and I don't think it'll end up being too tomatoey. So now I'm just mixing this tomato paste in with my garlic and my onions and making sure to warm it through. Okay, so that is piping hot, and now it says to add the ground beef. Now this recipe called for ground beef and ground lamb. We are not big lamb eaters in this house. I like lamb. Other people in my family, not so much. And so we are just using about 1.5 pounds of ground beef, because this recipe calls for 1 pound of ground beef and 1/2 pound of ground lamb. Now, the ground beef that we buy from a local butcher called the Heartland Abattoir, and they package it for us in 1 pound packages. And when we pick it up, it's usually already frozen. But the packages usually end up being a little more than 1 pound. So I did not weigh this package of meat, but it's probably a little more than 1 pound. So that is what I'm putting in. Like I said, you can use the 1 pound of ground beef and the 1/2 pound of ground lamb like the recipe calls for. Or you can just use all lamb if you wish. I'm sure you could make this even if you wanted to with like bison or deer meat. Like any kind of ground meat that isn't chicken or turkey would probably be really tasty. But like I said, we're just doing all ground beef here. And what the recipe says to do is just break up this meat and cook it. And so because I've added a lot of tomato paste, you're not really seeing the browning of the meat, but it is definitely going to happen. I will show you when I am done cooking this that it will brown. I absolutely have zero regrets of adding in all that tomato paste, because I think it's going to add amazing flavor to this. So when this is cooked and browned, I will show you what it looks like, and I'll be back. The ground beef and tomato paste and onions and garlic has sauteed. This smells incredible. I really think the addition of that whole 6-ounce can of tomato paste is a good choice. I'm sure there's somebody out there that's probably made this recipe before and is going to disagree with me. And that's fine. You have every right to disagree with my excessive use of tomato paste, but honestly, it smells amazing and I think it was a good choice. So the next step is going to be to add our seasonings. So I am going to make sure these hit the pan because I like to wake up my seasonings when I put them in a recipe before I just kind of mix them in with liquid. So that was oregano, cinnamon, salt, and pepper. What else? I think that was it. Yep, oregano, cinnamon, salt, and pepper. And that cinnamon in this recipe, like, do not skip it. It adds such a lovely flavor and sort of like aroma to this meat mixture. And you really don't want to skip that. If you want to just stick with 2 tablespoons of tomato paste, I don't blame you, but I'm telling you, do not skip on that cinnamon. And so that is all mixed in, smells lovely. We are tucking in 2 bay leaves. I just did petite diced tomatoes here from Aldi. It's actually like a 14.5-ounce can. I guess they just don't make 15-ounce cans anymore. And we are tossing in a 1/2 cup of water as well. And so this now will cook down for 30 minutes. So I'm just going to mix this thoroughly. This will cook for 30 minutes. This water will evaporate. All the flavors will happily blend together in this meat sauce. And when this is ready, we will show you how we put the pastitsio together. Now, while this is simmering, I am going to move on to making homemade pita bread. And I am making a double batch of pita bread. We have made this pita recipe before. It's excellent. The recipe makes 8 pitas, and we are going to double that because I know that 8 pitas is not going to be enough. Between us, we have a friend coming over to eat with us, and we're going to be bringing dinner to my parents as well. So I am going to turn the heat down on this sauce, this meat sauce. I'm going to let it simmer over a very low heat for about a 1/2 hour. Now, because I added probably 3 times the amount of tomato paste this original recipe called for, I'm adding extra water. So instead of just a 1/2 cup of water here, I'm adding a full cup of water. I want this sauce to be able to simmer, and I want all the flavors to blend together, but I just don't want it to be too thick and I don't want it to burn. So I did add extra water, but no worries, it will simmer and cook down. And like I said, this is over a low heat. And now we will make some pita bread. Our sauce is simmering. I put it on a very, very small, tiny burner under a low heat or over a low heat. And we're going to let that simmer a little while longer. Smells great. We tasted it for seasoning. We just added a little bit more pepper. And so now we're going to make our pita bread. So this pita bread recipe will be linked in the description below. I am doubling it. So first I will be taking 2 cups of warm water, adding that to my mixer. I am adding a teaspoon of sugar. And sugar makes yeast happy, so we will do that. And then we are adding, it is 4.5 teaspoons of our yeast. So now we're just gonna whisk this and just kind of let it hang out. And once this kind of just dissolves a little bit, we're going to then mix in the rest of the ingredients. Now, this is instant yeast, and as I've said in previous videos, with instant yeast, you don't have to let it sit for 5 minutes and bubble. You can just go right ahead with the recipe right away because instant yeast will react more rapidly than other kinds of yeast like rapid rise. But I do like to mix my yeast in with my liquid and the sugar just to get it going. I don't like to start mixing up my dough and find that I have like clumps of yeast in the flour. That is difficult to deal with and I don't love it. So we are just gonna kind of give this a little mix and make sure that it is good to go. All right, our yeast and water and sugar are ready, and so we're gonna add flour, salt, and olive oil. So we are adding 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And when I cook with olive oil, like on the stove, I don't really measure out exact amounts. But for baking, you definitely wanna make sure that you have the right amount of the ingredients in your recipe. So that's 2 tablespoons of olive oil. We've got 4 teaspoons of salt. And then we have 5 cups of flour. And I'm just gonna get everything in the mixer all at once. Okay, so 5 cups of flour, and then I'm gonna put my dough hook on, and I'm going to let this mix. Once it combines, you're going to make sure that it is mixed on a medium speed for 8 minutes. So I'm just going to mix it first to combine, then once combined, do 8 minutes. I'm just going to take a minute to scrape everything down here. The flour likes to kind of creep up the sides of the bowl. So I'm just going to scrape it down. Keep combining it. Our pita dough is almost completely combined. I'm just scraping up any bits of flour just to make sure we don't end up missing any of it. And as soon as it's combined, I will set a timer for 8 minutes and then show you what it looks like when it is done mixing. Our dough has mixed for 8 minutes, and so now I'm just going to take this pita dough out of my mixer, and I'm going to get that out of the way. And I just have a bowl here that I've coated with some oil, and I will put this dough in this bowl and flip it around a couple times so that it gets coated with the oil. And then this is going to rise at room temperature for about an hour. You want this dough to double in size. And then we will divide it into 16 pieces, and we will make pita bread, and I will show you how we do that. So let's get this out of our mixer. And this dough is a little bit sticky, but there's absolutely no need to worry about that, because as it rises, the texture will change, and we do not need to worry at all about the stickiness, because it will end up being perfectly fine. So that's all we're doing, is just putting that in a bowl coated with a little oil, and we're going to cover this with a lid, and we're going to let this rise at room temperature, and we'll show you what it looks like when it's done. So our pastitsio is ready to go in the oven. So our sauce has cooked for about a half hour, and I am now going to just add this on top of the pasta and then top this with the bechamel. Then it is going to bake at 350 for, it says 45 minutes. I'll check it after that 45 minutes. If it needs a little bit more time, then we can absolutely let it cook a little bit longer, but I am just going to get this meat sauce on top of our pasta, and then I am topping this with the bechamel. I think I'm going to put this on a tray when it cooks, just in case it wants to bubble over a little bit. I don't want to have to clean that up out of my oven. And so then this is our bechamel that goes on the top. And this does not get mixed in with the sauce. It really just goes right on top of it, and it will set and bake as this bakes. So I am going to put this on a cookie tray for sure. I'm going to get this in the oven, and I will show you what it looks like when it's done. Our pastitsio is in the oven, and our pita bread dough is rising. So I am going to get our chicken going. I have lined my baking sheets with foil. I know that I could just put my chicken on these trays as is and bake my chicken that way, but I don't really like scrubbing pans very much, so I do line with foil, and I do use cooking spray. This chicken marinated overnight, and so I am just going to put my chicken thighs on one tray, and if all 8 don't want to fit on the same tray, well then I can certainly pull out another, but I think we'll be okay. And then I'm going to put my chicken legs on another tray. I think the thighs will probably cook a little longer than the legs will. And this marinade had garlic and lemon juice and olive oil and oregano and salt and pepper in it. Also had a little bit of red wine vinegar. So this is going to be great. It wasn't 8. How many chicken thighs did we do? And this is definitely, is it 10? I have no idea. It's more than 8 though, I think. Is it 10? Oh, thank you. Handsome husband says it's 10 and I'm just gonna believe him. But I am leaving a little bit of space between them. I think they'll be fine. And now I'm going to put my chicken legs on the pan. And I think we did 12 of these? 12. Was it 12? Yeah, he kept count better than I did. So 12 of these. I will be discarding the marinade completely. When you marinate meat for any length of time, you don't want to reuse that marinade. I think I've seen sometimes people like cook it down, and then I don't feel comfortable doing that. I will be throwing that out. I will also be thoroughly washing the chicken off my hands, and after I do that, I will put these in a 400-degree oven. I believe the chicken thighs will take about an hour. The legs will probably take a little bit less, maybe about 40 minutes, and I will show you what it looks like when it's done. Our Greek potatoes need to go in the oven. So I'm gonna get these ready. Now I've just washed these russet potatoes. I'm not going to peel them. If you really want to peel them, you can, but you don't have to. And the recipe just says to cut them in, each potato should be cut into 6 wedges. So I'm gonna do that, and then I'm gonna put them on my prepared baking sheet. And this one actually got cut into 4 wedges instead of 3, but it will be fine. That was a really big potato. This one's kind of a smaller potato, so I may actually end up cutting these a little bit bigger. Just that way all the potatoes cook at the same time. That's the main thing with this, is that you want your potato wedges to all be very similar in size so that you don't end up with some potatoes that are cooked, some potatoes that are burnt, and then some that are still raw. So these larger potatoes I'll cut into 3 pieces, each half, and then I don't have any smaller ones left, so that is the plan. And I will fit these all on this one baking sheet, which I have lined with foil. Again, I could probably cook these potatoes just on the cookie sheet with absolutely no foil, and but then I'd have to clean a pan later, and I don't really like doing that. So these potatoes are going to get covered with this lovely vinaigrette. And so you bake the potatoes with the vinaigrette, and then you also reserve some of it and drizzle some on the top at the end when they're done. And they are absolutely delicious. These Greek potatoes will also get some chicken stock on the bottom of the cookie sheet and will be absolutely tender and delicious when they bake. So we're gonna see if we can fit one more potato on here. Sadly, I don't think we can. I think we're gonna end up having to separate this into 2 different pans. But that is okay. And I've got a couple yucky spots on this potato, so I will just get rid of those. And then I'm gonna make up the dressing. And so I'll get another pan in a moment, but first we'll make up this dressing. So I want a shallot chopped. So I just peeled the skin off this shallot, and I'm just giving it like a rough chop. And I'm gonna put it in this bowl here with my parsley. I've got a tablespoon of fresh parsley that I just chopped up, and that is going in there. Now, if you didn't want to use shallots, or you don't have them, or you don't have access to them, you could use a little bit of onion or just use a little bit of extra garlic, but the shallot is absolutely delicious and adds such great flavor. So I am just chopping up this garlic here. There's 2 cloves. I could use my little garlic chopper, but honestly, it's just 2 cloves, and so I am just gonna get them done and in the bowl. So in addition to my garlic and parsley and shallots, I'm adding about 1/3 of a cup of lemon juice plus like a tablespoon, and then a tablespoon of dried oregano. I'm just gonna kind of eyeball that. and then some salt and pepper. And I'm just gonna dry my fingers here because I don't wanna reach into my salt with wet fingers. Potatoes tend to need quite a bit of salt, so I am going to definitely add enough. I also need 1.5 cups of olive oil. And so I am going to just take the end off my olive oil dispenser here so that I don't end up taking 9 months to pour that olive oil out. And so it's 1.5 cups of olive oil. That is 1. And that is 1/2. So now this dressing is going to be used, like I said, to cook the potatoes, but is also going to be used to serve on top of the potatoes when they're ready. And so I'm just gonna mix this now. Let me just get my other pan out here because unfortunately I can't fit all of these potatoes on one pan. So I will line this tray with some foil. I think that there is going to be plenty of oil on this pan and we really don't have to worry about our potatoes sticking, but I like to ensure that nothing is going to get stuck. So I will take some of these potatoes off of this tray and just make sure to evenly distribute them. And like I said, these are going to bake in the oven at about 400 or 425 for about 45 minutes to an hour. And not only are they going to get this delicious dressing on them, but they're also going to get some chicken stock poured on the bottom of the pan, which is going to help the potatoes to cook. But it's also going to kind of caramelize a little bit with the oil and the seasonings. I just found sort of a yucky spot of potatoes, so we're just going to get that out of there. When I make mashed potatoes and I use my potato ricer, the potato ricer takes out these icky bits for you, but unfortunately my knife doesn't do that unless I notice it. So there we go. All right, so now I'm going to use about half of this mixture on my potatoes. So I'll get a nice big spoon here. It's going to be easiest to use a spoon to pour it on rather than just dumping, because I guarantee if I dump this bowl, it will end up dripping all down the side and everywhere, and then I'm going to have a whole mess to clean up. So I'm going to start with 1 spoonful on this tray and 1 spoonful on this tray. I'll toss these around. I feel like that's less than half, so I'll probably do like a little bit less than a full spoon there, and a little bit less than a full spoon here, and that should probably be good. And then the rest of that vinaigrette is going to get saved. Now I took off my rings and my watch so that I could get my hands dirty here. The best way to get these potatoes coated with this vinaigrette is really just to get your hands in there. I suppose I could waste my time with some tongs and try to be classy about the whole thing, but it's just going to be easier to do this. And so I'm going to get these all coated with the vinaigrette, and then I will show you how to add the chicken stock. I will add the chicken stock to this once I get it in the oven. That way I'm not carrying a tray across the room with slushy broth all over it. And so adding the broth after you've gotten them into the oven usually is the less messy way to go. Here is our pastitsio. It just came out of the oven and it smells amazing, but it is very hot and very bubbly. So we're gonna let this rest for at least 30 to 40 minutes before we cut into it. But that bechamel has set nicely on the top, and I am sure that our sauce underneath and our pasta are probably nice and hot and bubbly, and I will cut into a piece of this in a little bit and show you what that looks like. It's time to put our Greek potatoes in the oven. And so this oven is now at 425. Our pastitsio came out, and so I was able to turn this oven up. And Each tray is going to get about a 1/4 cup of chicken stock on it, and because these trays are not hot yet, I can still safely touch the edge of them. So just adding that chicken stock. And if I notice that they're a little bit dry, I could always add a little bit more. In fact, I think I want to add a little bit more to that bottom tray. So I think I'm just going to add a little bit more to this bottom tray just because it didn't seem like it got enough. So about 1/4 cup to a 1/2 cup of chicken stock on each tray. And now those are going to cook at 425 for about 40 to 45 minutes. We're going to make our fattoush, which is a Mediterranean or Lebanese salad that's going to go really well with our Greek chicken and potatoes. We do still have to make our pita, but we are almost there. Dinner is almost ready. So I am going to chop up some veggies here. We've got cucumbers, radishes, tomatoes. We've got some green onion. I've already washed and spun my romaine lettuce, so it is nice and clean and also not super waterlogged, so it will not water down the dressing. And I am just going to chop these cucumbers into small pieces. And I just bought like the small cucumbers at Aldi. The recipe called for Persian cucumbers, but I just ended up going with like the small, like seedless cucumbers. And then we are chopping up some scallion or green onion. So I'm just going to cut these down the center there, just make them a little thinner. And I think I'm mostly going to use the green. The white part of the green onion can sometimes just be a little bit too spicy for the kids in this house, and so I might just leave the white part to the side, and then if the adults want to add that to their salad, they can, but I just, I tend to make things kid-friendly when I can, and so these just might be a little bit too oniony, so we'll just kind of reserve those and put those to the side. Then the radish, we're going to slice really, really thin. We like radish in this household. And so the recipe just called for 4 radishes. So I'm going to cut these like in almost like a julienne or like in strips. And then this dressing has fresh mint and olive oil. It's got garlic, lemon juice. So a lot of the similar flavors, like a lot of the recipes I've made this weekend kind of have similar flavors, so they should go well together, hopefully. That's my plan. So I'm going to cut it this way because then that way each slice has a little bit of the red on the end. I am going to put the dressing on this salad and let it sit for a little while before we serve it. This is not something I wanted to make yesterday. It would have been way too far ahead of time. But today, I figure we'll eat dinner in probably about 35 minutes or so. And so because we're eating soon, it won't be a problem to let it sit for a while. So that's going to go into my bowl. Oh, I do have one more cucumber here that I almost missed. So we'll get this going and into the bowl. And then we've just got our tomatoes, and we'll make up our dressing. And then I've got to cook up our pita. And with the tomatoes, I'm just going to cut them similarly to how I cut the radish so that I can cube these up. And I bet this salad would be really good in the summer when all the tomatoes and cucumbers and everything are really fresh from the garden. I'm going to take out some of the extra seeds from some of these tomatoes. Adding all that extra seed to the salad could tend to make it a little watery, so sometimes getting this part out of your tomato just makes the tomato eating experience a little more enjoyable. So we'll get that extra seedy, liquidy stuff out of the way. And And I could have used my chopper for this, but honestly, it doesn't take but a minute or two to chop everything, so I don't mind using a cutting board and a knife. Okay, so the rest of the tomatoes are going to go in. Now the dressing consists of a bunch of fresh mint. So fresh mint's going to go in the actual salad, but also some is going to go in the dressing. So I'm just going to finely chop up this mint. It smells delicious. And I'll probably grab a little fresh parsley and add that in too. Okay, so it looks like a little bit of mint goes in the dressing, so I'm just going to grab probably about that much for the dressing, and then the rest is going to go in the salad. And the recipe calls for a medium lemon juiced. These lemons that I've had have been so juicy. I'm just going to do half of one of these lemons. I don't want to end up having the salad dressing be too lemony. So I'm just, half of this lemon is giving me plenty of juice. So I'm going to stick with that. There's a clove of garlic going in here. So I will just chop this up as small as I can get it. Get that into my dressing. I've got 1/4 cup of extra virgin olive oil. It was the juice of that lemon, a tablespoon of our pomegranate molasses, and then a teaspoon of sumac. So sumac I bought at the grocery store. In a way, it almost looks like parsley, but it does not smell, or paprika, but it does not smell like paprika. And it is an ingredient that really just adds such good flavor to this dish. I feel like sometimes, you know, when you go to make a dish that you've never made before, it might have an ingredient and just a tiny amount that you're thinking, oh, I'm not going to bother, I'll just leave it out. But sometimes you really need to include it because it makes a difference. So this is pomegranate molasses, and a tablespoon of that is going to go into our dressing. And we did a teaspoon of the sumac. We've got, so olive oil, lemon, molasses, sumac, the mint, the garlic, and then we just need a little bit of salt. So about a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And then I'm just going to take my whisk here and mix this up. And then this dressing is going to go on our salad, and then I'm going to let it sit and let that dressing really soak in. And we're going to make our pita. Before I do that, I'm just going to taste this dressing and see if it needs anything else. Oh, that's great. The pomegranate molasses is really interesting, but I do think it needs a little bit more salt, so I'm just going to do a little bit more salt. And it doesn't call for pepper technically, but I think I'm just going to add a little bit of pepper as well. And you know, I hate to say it, but I do think a little more lemon juice. I know everything we've had this weekend has been coated in lemon juice, but a little bit more lemon juice would make a little sense. So now I'm going to just put this on my salad ingredients, mix this all around. And then we are going to make our pita, and our dinner will be ready. So I will show you the pita when we are cooking it up. Our pita dough is ready. Now, the first time I ever made this recipe, the recipe said to roll out the pita like into 8-inch circles. And when I did that, I just ended up with like basically what looked like a flour tortilla. So pita to me is sort of like thicker and puffier, and so I am not rolling these out with extra flour. I just separated my dough into 16 even pieces because I did do a double batch, and so one batch would normally get you 8 pita, but this batch 8 would not be enough really, because there's 5 of us eating tonight, plus I'm bringing food to my parents. So all I do is just take the dough and like shape it with my fingers on the counter. Now this dough had like some nice oil on it from being in that bowl and rising, and so I didn't oil my cast iron skillet here very much. I just added a little bit of oil, and now I'm going to just brown them on both sides. And like I said, if you roll these out to like an 8-inch circle, I just end up feeling like they're way too thin. So if you want like a thick and fluffy pita, then you need to keep them thicker like this. So I am just gonna make up all these pita, and then the rest of our food has come out of the oven. Our pastitsio is definitely gonna be cool enough to slice, and so we will be eating very soon. So I just flipped these pitas, and you can see like the first one, I feel like just like with when you make pancakes, when you're making pita, like the first one always looks a little weird and doesn't come out right, but then subsequent ones look great. So this one's nice and brown over here. And if you have to flip them a couple of times, that's fine. I'm just using my fingers to flip them, but you know, it's not a bad idea to use like, you know, your tongs if you want, so you don't burn yourself. But see, when I grab this with the tongs, I feel like I'm messing with the dough on that one side, which is why I tend to go with my fingers. And that one came out really good. That one flipped beautifully and is nice and brown. So you just kind of have to grill them a couple minutes per side. And the recipe says to grill them for about a minute per side until you start to see bubbles forming and then flip. But because I'm making them a little bit thicker, you know, you may need to cook a little bit longer, but this is what you want to see. You want to see like that it's kind of puffy and then it's kind of brown on each side. And like I said, I did not roll these with additional bench flour, and I did not add a ton of oil to the cast iron because I don't want them to be greasy. And I'm just going to keep going and make our pitas. So this right here is the color you want to see on your pita. This is the last of the pita, and so both sides of these are nicely browned, and I just kind of flip them a couple of times and just get them the way I like them to look and make sure that they've puffed a little bit, and then put them in a pile to keep warm off to the side. And now we're going to plate up our dinner. Okay, dinner is ready, and so all I'm going to do here is just pour this vinaigrette on our potatoes. I may not use all of it here, but this is an absolutely delicious recipe, and I think what I will do is leave a couple over here without the vinaigrette on them, just in case anybody would like just a plain potato instead of the one with the vinaigrette. Now we've got our baked chicken thighs. They look absolutely delicious. We have our chicken legs and our pastitsio. Also, I've got some crumbled up feta there, some store-bought grape leaves and dill dip with my homemade hummus. We've got our homemade pita, our dessert, which we will thoroughly enjoy later, and I actually did try earlier because I didn't want to wait, and it was delicious. And then we have our fattoush. So I would like to thank you for joining us today in the Pickup Kitchen. I am grateful that you are here and that you are enjoying watching me make these meals. Thank you again for watching, and if you haven't already, please remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thanks and good night.